Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today we are talking about a brand new program at Tarleton State University, Specialists in School Psychology. And I am so pleased to be joined by one of the faculty members from the program, Dr. Stephanie Robertson. And as she is going through the presentation, if you do have questions, we ask that you go ahead and submit those using the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will handle those at the end. But for now, I'm going to just turn things over to Dr. Robertson.
Thank you, Dr. Ekpo. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie Robertson, as she said, and I am the program coordinator for the brand new Specialist in School Psychology graduate program at Tarleton. My background is in school psychology and in pediatric clinical psychology, and this program has been developed in coordination with the Tarleton Center for Child Wellbeing. And we're really, really excited about this program because, as you'll see in just a second, it is desperately needed. We need school psychologists badly in our community and in Texas generally. The program was developed around the NASP practice model, and we are pursuing accreditation through NASP, the National Association for School Psychologists, really, really quickly. So we'll start with the accreditation process in the fall as soon as we admit our first cohort of students. And the program really does focus on improving lives and learning of children and youth. So who are school psychologists? And I don't know if you all are familiar with the school psychologist role, but I'm going to kind of do a quick overview on that. So school psychologists are highly qualified professionals with a graduate degree, typically are working in schools, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a second. But we provide comprehensive psychological, psychoeducational, and counseling and consulting services to all students. And sometimes we deliver those services ourselves directly, and sometimes we're providing consultation to teachers or to parents to help influence children's learning indirectly. So we promote learning, we promote positive behavior and development, and student social, emotional, and mental health. So one of the analogies that I've used in the past to describe it is that we want children to grow. So if you imagine children as kind of fish, right? We want them to grow up and be healthy, big, strong fish. Our job is to keep the water nice and clean so they can grow up healthy and strong. So where do school psychologists work? Well, the vast majority of us are working in public schools. So the local independent school districts in this area, some larger ones like in the Metroplex and Dallas and Houston, but mostly people are working in public schools. Some folks do work at colleges and universities, so doing what we're doing at the Tarleton Center for Child Wellbeing or teaching future school psychologists. Some are working in private schools. Nationally, some work in private practice. That's not an option for a school psychologist right now in Texas, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a little bit as well. And then we have other sort of facilities where people look for employment. So becoming a school psychologist is a little bit of a chore, and it's because we want you to be the very best practitioners that you can be. So this program is a 63-hour graduate program. It's actually somewhere between a master's degree and a PhD or a doctoral degree. And so you'll see it sometimes coded as master's, sometimes coded as PhD, sometimes coded as specialist, but it's really its own standalone degree somewhere in between those two. So we have coursework in the fundamentals of school psychology, assessment, consultation, advanced behavior modification. If you're a psychology major, you might have taken some of these courses as undergrads. And if you're a current graduate student or a current master's in applied psychology student, you may have taken some courses that sound very similar. But the focus of the school psychology program is going to be training you to score, administer, interpret a broad array of psychological tests. And so because of that, it is a longer program. So it's a 4-year program. That 4th year is a supported internship position. So you're actually employed full-time in the schools as a school psychologist with the support of a site supervisor and the support of your faculty supervisor, helping you to sort of get your feet under you as a school psychologist. Those internships are paid. We advocate really, really strongly for those internships to be paid. Not at the same rate as a starting school psychologist who's fully licensed, but it is a paid internship. Students are admitted in cohorts to the Stephenville campus because so much of the testing that we do requires face-to-face interaction. It is a face-to-face cohort model where we admit only in the fall, and that group of students go through the program together. So typically in a cohort model like this, students get really close to one another. They develop lifelong friendships. In fact, we all go to the National Association for School Psychologists conference every year and get together with our cohort mates as well. You can see the pie chart covers some of the main domains from the NASP practice model. That's again how we build our coursework. So that's just some of the 10 domains. This is an example of a potential course sequence. We don't have it fully set in stone yet. So some of the courses may kind of shift around, but you can kind of get this as a framework for understanding how the courses are structured and built for students. So we really want to develop your foundational skills early on, how to make ethical decisions, how to understand the statistics behind the psychometric measures we use, how to select those, a fundamental understanding of the theory and practice of psychopathology and intervention. So we want to have some foundational information in your first year, and then we move very quickly into a year of learning in detail all of the assessments. So your second year is really focused. It's a pretty intensive year learning how to score and administer all of the instruments. Then in your third year, you start going out into the schools. And so this is a 20-hour-a-week practicum experience. And that experience allows you to you have to practice assessment in the first semester, and you have to practice intervention and consultation in the second semester. And so we really kind of structure that so that once you get out into the schools in your internship, you know how to do the assessments, you know how to do the consultations, you've done them with a great deal of scaffolded experiences, and then you practice much more independently by your fourth year. We also do require oral examinations for continuation in the program after a year at the beginning of year 2. And students all complete the praxis, which is part of the licensure process for school psychologists. And I'll talk to you more about that in 1 second as well. In order to get into the program, students need a minimum GPA of 3.0 in their last 60 hours of undergraduate coursework. They first apply to the College of Graduate Studies, and once you're screened for your GPA minimum requirements, then the College of Graduate Studies issues you an email that tells you the rest of the information you need. So your current CV or resume, your letter of intent / essay, which includes 3 specific questions. Once we've screened those, the screening committee will then call you to schedule Zoom interviews, and there's a Zoom interview process as well. We do require students to have psychology education or a closely related undergraduate degree, or to enroll in some leveling courses, which we would do on a case-by-case basis. But students really need a fundamental understanding of psychological constructs, psychological measures, educational language, things like that. So what's the job outlook like for school psychologists? Well, there's a national shortage, which is why, partly why we've developed this program. So the NASP, and the National Association for School Psychologists, recommends about 1 school psychologist to 500 students. So that's a 1 to 500 ratio. In Texas, we're at a 1 to last time I looked, it was like 2,300 students. So we're at 4 times the recommended student to psychologist ratio. We've got to get more psychologists out into the schools, especially post-COVID, especially with the anxiety and mental health crises we're seeing in our country. It's so, so, so important to create more school psychologists to help children and families. We know that federal education law includes provision for school psychologists, and it's a top 10 best social services jobs in the United States. So we really, really, really need practitioners, and the job prospects are great. You can see here, these are mean salaries by region, and some of you have taken the statistics classes to know that means are sometimes not the best representation. Medians are also maybe a better representation. But you can see that the mean salary is already pretty good by region. Our region is one of the lower, actually it is the lowest region, but I can tell you that right now there are positions posted all across Texas that are offering much more than that. Some of our really tiny school districts are not able to offer as much, and so that kind of skews our numbers a little bit low because we're so rural. So in order to get a job as a school psychologist, you have to have all of the coursework in order to do it. And then the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council offers the licenses. And so in order to become licensed as a school psychologist, you have to complete your coursework, you have to complete your internship. You also have to complete what's called the Texas Jurisprudence Exam, which kind of looks at laws related to the practice of psychology in Texas to make sure that you're proficient at that. And we will train you on how to complete that. You also have to take the praxis in order to become licensed. Some individuals are really interested in independent practice rather than having to practice just in the schools. So independent practice is possible in the state of Texas at this level. It's called the Licensed Psychological Associate, or the LPA. And in order to obtain that license to practice independently, you have to take all of our 63 hours of coursework, and you have to add in a history and systems course. So you are able to do that with 66 credit hours. And then you have to pass the psychologist licensing exam, and you have to pass a different one. So you can do the independent license, but the program trains you to do the licensed specialist in school psychology, really to function within the bounds of the schools. And now I am happy to answer any questions that you have about the program or anything else.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Robertson. To our live audience members, you should see a Q&A box that you can use to submit your questions. And as we're waiting for those to come through, I do have some questions of my own.
Sure.
We're currently seeking students to start in the first batch this fall of 2025. And so is the specialist program to become a school psychologist the same as becoming a professional school counselor?
So it's actually different than a school counselor position. So a school counselor position requires a separate master's degree. So the counseling program has their own master's degree in school counseling. The difference between a school counselor and a school psychologist is that school psychologists are very, very involved in special education processes and decision making. So a school psychologist has training in counseling, has training in intervention, has training in consultation, but they also have training in assessment, really, really detailed training and assessment. So we're able to make eligibility determinations for special education services. We serve on special education teams called ARDs. We help to support and develop individualized education programs for students. If a student has a really hard time, we sometimes serve as a consultant if they have gotten into trouble, and we have to determine whether their behavior was a manifestation of their disability. So school psychologists are typically kind of pulled, or let's see, they function a little bit outside of the day-to-day school environment, where a school counselor is really in the classrooms every single day, working with guidance lessons, personal development lessons, helping students figure out what they want to be when they grow up. Our role is a little bit more specialized, and we work with cases that are what we would call higher acuity or more complicated clinically.
Very helpful to know. Right, you also mentioned that this is a face-to-face program based out of our main campus in Stephenville. Do you know yet what time of day the classes will be held? Would it be evening classes or throughout the day?
We don't have the schedule built yet, and so we don't know for sure what that's going to look like. I expect that at least some of the courses will be offered during the day, probably not all of them. There are only going to be 2 faculty when we start the program, and both of us have young children, so we wouldn't be able to teach all of the classes in the evenings because that would be all of the evenings during the week. So because there's only a couple of us, I expect we'll have some that are offered in in the daytime. I will also note that some of the classes are offered in a fully online format. So this program was built with a great deal of intentional overlap between our Master's in Applied Psychology and our new PhD program that's coming online. So there are several courses that are offered sort of exclusively online, including the summer courses. Those will be offered as mostly online courses. So not all of them, but some of them.
And so you'd mentioned you're going through the accreditation process. How does that impact students, like this first group's ability to maybe sit for their exams and that type of thing?
It's a great question. So the first year we will apply for and hopefully attain what's called NASP candidacy status. So that means that we're recognized as having our structure in place to align with NASP requirements. We can apply for full accreditation after 3 years when we've graduated our first class of students and we have metrics showing their success. So we have to, in order to obtain full accreditation, we have to not only demonstrate that we're teaching our students the way they need to be taught, but also that they're demonstrating mastery and success in those areas. So for those first round of students who are graduating from the program, they don't have to have graduated from an accredited program to sit for exams at all. In fact, many programs in our state are not accredited or some are in some sort of stage of seeking accreditation. And so their accreditation isn't a requirement in order to practice. But it does help to make the process a little bit easier for our students as they go through the application process.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm interested to hear you talk about the internships and the fact that they are paid. Just curious, who pays that? Is it the sponsoring school?
It is, yes. And so usually what winds up happening is the student accepts a position as an intern. The school district pays that internship position, and it's typically a benefited position because it is a full-time position. But it's often about half of what you would make as a fully licensed school psychologist because they have to allocate a pretty good number of resources to providing supervision and support and training to the interns. And so they get paid about half of what you get paid once you finish and graduate.
And is that workload comparable to full-time employment?
It is. Mm-hmm.
All right, very good. Very good. Well, we do have a viewer question here. Let's make sure we get to that. And apparently they're already in another different master's program. Although this is a cohort model, if I've already taken some of the required courses in another master's program, will they still apply towards this specialist degree?
Yes. So we have a number of students who are currently enrolled in our Master's in Applied Psychology program who want to bridge into this specialist in school psychology program. And so what that will entail is we have to count the courses. And so it will just be a meeting with an academic advisor to say, yes, this course counts. Yes, this course counts. And many of the courses will count because they are the same course. So we certainly wouldn't make a student take the exact same course twice.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So in terms of finding this next cohort, you're accepting applications right now. what does the process look like once someone has submitted their application to Tarleton's College of Graduate Studies?
So they submit their application to the College of Graduate Studies. The College of Graduate Studies views their GPA to make sure they meet the minimum requirements for the program. And if they do, then they issue an email and they say, these are your next steps. We need you to submit your CV and resume. And this is from the College of Graduate Studies. So the students submit it back to the College of Graduate Studies, not directly to me. CV and resume, your letter of intent, which has some essay questions on it. And once the students submit those materials, probably the beginning of April to mid-April, we'll start reviewing those applications and contacting students about scheduling Zoom interviews. So our admissions committee this year is a little bit different than it will be in the future when we have our full faculty, but this year is a different group of folks. But we will schedule Zoom interviews with students, and then after the Zoom interview process is completed, the College of Graduate Studies will notify our finalists and offer them admission to the program. So they do that, and then they accept by about May 15th, and that's when we'll have our cohort set and ready to start in the fall.
And then they would work with you or some other faculty to get enrolled in their classes for fall.
Yes.
And so the groups basically stays together in the same courses through the whole 4 years.
They do. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I imagine that will be very impactful in terms of student retention and support.
I think so. And I really do. I have found that my cohort of co-graduate students and I are still very, very close. We reach out to each other all the time to staff cases, to bounce ideas off of each other, to say, have you heard of this new measure of dyslexia? Or have you heard of this new measure for autism? Have you tried it out? You know, is it worth the investment? So we have a lot of back and forth communication, and sort of those friendships that you develop are so professionally relevant and professionally important.
So it's not only a morale booster, it's the building of your first professional network, really.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. This is very exciting. Best of luck to you all as you narrow down who will be in your first cohorts this fall of 2025. It's been a pleasure hearing about this new offering. For our live audience members, a recording of this presentation will be available to review on demand in the College of Graduate Studies YouTube channel. So if you need to go back and rewatch it, please do. If you know of others who could benefit from this program, we hope you will share the recording with them as well. So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. And I think at this point, we can end our webinar. So thank you so much to all.
Thanks, everybody.
Have take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.